Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and welcome to another amazing, powerful word for the day. This one basically it's a powerful word. It gets started out with an analogy or a story, but if I actually give the actual story, it's got enough power packed into it to make a deep impact in your life and my life. I mean, the premise of this is make smart little decisions. Because every decision you do in secret, you don't realize it, but God sees it. And then it can affect your everyday life out in the open. So, the story I'm going to get into here is King David. Little background on King David. He was a little shepherd boy. He became the king over the entire country of Israel, like someone becoming a president from humble, small beginnings, like the farmer or whatever. But because the current guy, Saul, what was his hamartia? What was his big mistake? He didn't follow God. It's like Israel didn't have a king. Like we want to be like Syria and Lebanon, these other countries. We want to have a king too. And Samuel, the prophet's like, God's your king. He's your representative, worship him. And they're like, well, that's cool, but we want a king we can see too. And God's like, all right, I'll give you a king. And he kind of felt a little snuffed. So he gave him Saul. Saul was a good-looking guy. He said that he stood head and shoulders taller than all the other men. Yeah, it looks like a king could lead us into battle. The only problem was he got puffed up in his head, thinking he was great, and he quit taking good advice. Like God would advise him about certain things. He's like, I don't need to follow that. And his throne got stripped from him. And then you get David coming in. David had everything given to him. Everything. He got, he had all the wives, the concubine. He had the power. He had everything. But he became idle and he neglected his everyday duties. Basically, if we go to the book of 2 Samuel, it's going to talk about David. And it's an exciting story. I mean, I can give you the quick 5-minute thesis, or we could read it. And I think in actual reading it, it helps out. David struggles. 2 Samuel 11:1. In the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, David sent Joab and the Israelite army to fight the Ammonites. Okay, so sometimes, like when David was younger, he'd lead them. He'd go right out there with them in battle. But this time he stayed back. And you'll see his idle hands led to trouble. So they destroyed the Ammonite army and laid siege to the city of Rabbah. However, David stayed behind in Jerusalem. He's chilling at the palace, man. He's got the king's life going on. And you'll see that during his times of struggle, when he was trying to become king and Saul was out to kill him, he was seeking God with all of his heart. So late one afternoon, after his midday rest, he's chilling at home, David got out of bed and was walking on the roof of the palace. As he looked out over the city, he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. Now, you could say there's two sins going on here. Number one, David's chilling out, and all of a sudden, bam! And where does adultery start? Where does a great sin start? Do you just all of a sudden trip and you fall into bed with someone? No, it starts in the mind, in lusting or looking after somebody. And this is a good word. It's not some story I made up. It's historical. We've seen it play out over and over. So he saw her taking a bath. So he sent someone to find out who she was. And he was told she's Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Okay, but check out, who's Uriah? He's one of David's best generals out there fighting the battle. So what does David do? Oh, yeah, man, that's someone else's wife. Let's about face right now. Don't look again. Tell her to go get some clothes on. I'm going to go into I got 17 wives. I'm going to go into one of them. And maybe I should actually go out and check on the battle. Maybe I should attend to my duties. Is that what David did? No, David said, go get her. And when she came to the palace, he slept with her. He saw her, went and got her, slept with her. Uno, dos, tres. She had just completed the purification rites after having her menstrual period. Then she returned home. Later, when Bathsheba discovered that she was pregnant, she sent a message to David saying, I'm pregnant. The TV soap operas don't get much better than this. He's thinking, all right, bam, I want it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to have it. I'm going to send it home. Press delete. Good, done. Bam! Pregnant. now suddenly the sin that he's done has serious consequences. And this is the example in this story where it's like, all right, you can have sin. I mean, adultery is a huge sin. And like in our society, it's been trivialized. Like it's not as illegal as it used to be. But this is why it's so bad. Number one, David was betraying one of his best generals. Number two, now all of a sudden there's a third person involved, the child. So this gets complicated. Then David sent word to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite. So Joab sent him to David. When Uriah arrived, David asked him how Joab and the army were getting along on the war. How's the war going? Oh, he's making small talk. Go home and just relax. See, he's hoping that this general will just go home, relax, and then everything's good. The general will go home to his beautiful hot wife, sleep with her, and then when this baby's on board, he'll just think it's his. So David's like, I'm smart. I'm going to cover the sin up under the rug because it's getting out of control. But Uriah didn't go home. He was a good general. He slept that night in the palace entrance with the king's palace guard. This guy wasn't a general or military leader for no reason. He was good. He didn't waste his time going home. There was a battle going on. He was attending to his duties. He wasn't committing adultery with someone's wife. So when David heard that Uriah had not gone, he summoned him and asked, what's the matter? Why didn't you go home last night after being away for so long? Uriah replied, the ark and the armies of Israel and Judah are living in tents, and Joab, my master's men, are camping in the open fields. How could I go wine and dine and sleep with my wife? I swear that I would never do such a thing. Man, David's got to be feeling terrible now. Well, stay here today, David told him, and tomorrow go return to the army. So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem till the next day. Then David invited him to dinner, and he got drunk. But even then, he wouldn't get Uriah to go home to his wife. Again, he slept in the palace. In the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, Joab led the attack. Okay, here we go. So the next morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and said, listen, station this guy on the front lines. When the war is going on, have him go up front, everybody else pull back. David went from being an awesome, humble shepherd boy who loved God and did what's right to this is one of the worst, conniving, horrible acts in history. Lust after the general's wife, sleep with your general's wife, then have your general killed. It's getting deep here, right? So he said, pull back. So then they said, it's done. That's what happened. And here's David's little bitty trifling thing. So the messenger went back. The enemy came out, chased us back to the city gate. The archers were killed, including Uriah the Hittite. Well, tell Joab not to be discouraged. David said, the sword devours this one this day and another one tomorrow. Fight harder next time and conquer the city. And some people died. Man, he just sweeps it under the rug. So when Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him when the period of mourning was over. So she wasn't all happy. She was sad. She cried. So David sent for another and brought her to the palace, and then she became one of his wives. So he's like, all right, everything's done. The pieces of the puzzle are all put back together that I messed up. But little bitty thing at the end, 2 Samuel 11 verse 27. When the period of mourning was over, David sent for her and brought her to the palace, and she became one of his wives. Then she gave birth to a son, and here's the big important thing. But the Lord was displeased. So God was mad about this. He saw it. And then you know the story about where the rich man has a whole bunch of cattle and lambs and everything, but a little poor guy who feeds a little lamb out of his own bowl and loves that lamb. But the rich guy has a feast. He kills the little guy's lamb and takes it. And David, this report comes to David about this happens. David's like, that guy deserves to die. He should pay back 4 lambs. And Nathan the Hittite is like, you're the guy. You went and killed Bathsheba, his husband, to take her. And God saw it. So therefore, you're going to be shamed publicly. The child that Bathsheba has is going to die. So here's where it hits home. David starts weeping. He starts crying. So he's married to Bathsheba now. She's in his house, but people know. It's not a secret. Uriah, this Nathan the prophet, knows what happened. So now, after all this little one night of sin is done, look at all the domino effect and the wreckage. And here's the thing. Do you think David's like, all right, the baby's going to die? No. When this baby's born, it lives 7 days, and after the 7th day it dies. David lays in the dirt and cries to God, please spare the baby. For 7 days, he doesn't need anything. While this baby's suffering, he's pleading with God. The baby dies. And he's like, and then he gets up and he eats and he washes himself. And the people are like, we don't understand you. You were crying for 7 days and the baby died and now you're okay with it. And David, this was kind of a powerful verse. David said, but why should I fast when he's dead? Can I bring him back to life again? I will go to him one day, but he cannot return to me. It's pretty sad. He's going to go see this baby in heaven one day, but the baby can't come and see him. It's pretty sad. So this is a bullet, rapid-fire version of a story that probably took a long time to actually play out. But the whole premise of this story is we need to make good decisions. Little bitty good decisions. We don't always see the awesome, great reward right away. But you can see the awesome, devastating effects of bad decisions down the road. David lost. His family rose up against him. The kids that he had with Bathsheba, one of them slept with his sister, got murdered. The other one, Absalom, rose up and fought against David and tried to take the king. David got kicked out of his throne for a little while till he died. The one son died. Finally, one good thing happened. They had Solomon, one of the wisest kings that ever lived. But basically, it's like you're going along your everyday life. You got your secret little sin going on, whatever that sin may be. This one was adultery. So we have to realize our sin can have long-term effects. So, it's like thou shalt not commit adultery. Why not? What's this little commandment? Here's some ramifications of the commandment. And let me tie this in. I got an associate's degree in sociology. I finished a bachelor's degree in history. Let me tie this into another little social economic problem. There was a governor, and he wanted to know where all the money in the budget was going in his governance in his area. It's like, why is the budget so small? Why don't we have any money to pave these roads or fix the street lights in the city and do this and that? I mean, now we got a budget here. I want to know where all the money's going. And they went out and they returned to him with this report. And this is what I learned doing a scientific sociology journal study. It's not my making the story up. They came back and they said, well, we've got where 90% of our budget's going. It's going to single moms that the taxpayers are supporting because their husbands are leaving them. And he's like, all right, from now on, I want everybody, before they get married in this region, to have to take a course on the importance of staying married and sticking it out with your family. So you see, it's like divorce isn't just a little bitty thing that affects you. It affects the whole community. You run out on your wife and kids, someone's got to step in and flip the bill. And a lot of times it's food stamps or it's something else. And then if you are a wife who've had your husband commits adultery, it goes on and on that it's devastating. So we all got to really, and look at David. Where did it begin? It began in his mind. So try to keep our minds pure. God, forgive us. God, help us. So that's the word for the day. It was an elongated one, but I think it's a powerful one, and I hope you enjoy it. And I hope it goes deep down in it. I hope you think it's exciting, and it's an incredible story. And hopefully this will spark your interest in the Bible and realize it's not just a big, thick book, black book with all these boring letters. It's got some intense stuff in it and some intense examples. Have a great day. Thanks for viewing.